Man, this thing is tiny. 8 foot my. Do you guys want me to mod this thing? Do you guys have any heart for me at all? Do you want me to lose my mind? What is this channel good for? If anything, it is to serve people who seek to be empowered. And in doing so, we have accomplished a great many things. Things that people thought were stupid or undoable or impractical. They said our boats would be overweight, that they would sink, that they would perform terribly. They were wrong. They said that you couldn't make any complex aluminum framing without welding. They were also wrong. They said these boats would become unstable death traps, that they wouldn't amount to anything more than just lipstick on a pig. But now with the help of all of you, and the help of everybody in the Tiny Boat Nation, they don't say much of anything. And once you break institutional norms and think outside the box, it's easy to prove other people wrong. But it's another thing to prove yourself wrong. I've made claims for a really long time that plastic boats simply are not worth converting. Why would you ever do that when you could do things like this? But the audience, the people who fuel this channel, who've created their own institution through it, have demanded that I stop doing these things and focus more on something else. Fine, you win. We will convert this 8-foot Pond Prowler into something that we think might be usable. It may or may not work. It might actually be an abysmal failure, but we'll never know until we try it. We were wrong about a lot of things before. Imagine what we'll be wrong about tomorrow. This video has timestamps and chapters. You can scroll if you're on a phone like this, or you can just go down to the description area and find the timestamp directly in the description. Also, there will be a list in the comment section and the description of all products used for this deal. This channel is completely funded by the people for the people. So if you like what we do here, please consider checking us out on patreon.com or becoming a channel member here on YouTube or checking out our store at tvnation.net. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the content. This is a vintage Pond Prowler 8 that we got from a yard sale for a few $100. If you go to buy one of these new, they will be a little bit different, but actually this one's probably even a little better, minus the middle, but you can get around that very, very easily. You can also check into the Pelican Bass Raider 10E, which seems to be a much safer and more capable boat for what we did here, and, well, look at it. But this is the canvas that we have to work with today. And the principles and the things that we do to this will likely convert right over to any sort of plastic catamaran style boat just like this. We have less than 8 feet to work with. This will be the smallest boat that I have ever done. I swore I would never do one, but here I am. The audience is also going to try and make me like mod a kayak. Yeah, I'm holding my breath for that, but I'm probably going to do that next. In order to see what we could really do to it, somebody had to write on it. But I'll be honest, I was too chicken. So like any responsible father, I sent my only son and heir to my bloodline out in the lake, just like that. And I just let him see what he could do with it. And in the midst of all of that, I did see what it could become. I started with one 4x8 sheet of 5-ply half-inch plywood. And that's gonna be suitable for most people up to like 220 pounds. Anything, bordering 240, 250 or up, you would need 5/8 or 3/4. Although if you're that heavy, I would strongly suggest the 10-foot plastic boat. We traced the boat from underneath with a Sharpie and then cut it with a circular saw. And then I got this nifty little ruler that I used for drywall once, and then it's been like lost. I use that to line up and make a grid. The strategy behind this is to section off the pontoon structures, as they're going to be able to provide the most support for this deck. We're going to add supports right in the crevice where those seats like locked in. And so that's where we're trying to grid it for right there. We're trying to make sure that those side panels just slightly gap over the pontoons, so we have areas to do that and also areas to turf and cut it off clean. Once we do that, we have these nifty little aluminum hatches that we plan to drop in right directly into the deck. We route down inside those gridded off sections the same depth of the hatches themselves, that way they'll fit in flush. If you don't get it perfectly straight, don't worry about it, because we're going to resin coat this entire thing and the epoxy will fill in any gap after we're all done here. Don't cut the middle section out until it's on the boat, because if you notice, after that middle section's gone, there's not a whole lot of wood left on that whole sheet. We cut out a lot of it, and a lot of that will just be replaced with straight aluminum hatches, which will be lighter overall. We're only using like maybe at or a little bit over 2/3 of the sheet. The full sheet of plywood before we distorted it was around 45 pounds, give or take. So after all mods considered, everything should be a little lighter than that. We then drill a series of holes just around the frame of the hatches, not to penetrate the wood, and then we countersink those holes so we can put flush mount stainless countersink screws inside them to attach the hatches fully to the deck. I cut the back side ends like that because the transom does this weird bubble thing. Sits higher than the rest of the frame, so we'll figure out something later. That also does the same thing in the front, but worse. It actually tapers down and then goes up. So to counteract this, we stick a 3/4 inch piece of aluminum tubing right there to kind of raise it, give it some structural rigidity. We mount it directly into the frame. The plastic is very rigid, and you're able to screw it in there as long as you don't blow out the screw. It will hold screws tight, just like wood. All these aluminum lids have dry track bleed outs to divert all water outside of the compartment. And the 12x16 in the middle just so happened to fit a little 5-gallon little tough tote from Lowe's, little, storage kit. That put that right in there. And then we secure that. After we secured all that, we stuck tape around the edge of the frame in hopes that when we resin coated around the edges to kind of seal all the wood, it will give the paint job some protection. By the way, we did disassemble these and paint these prior to installing them, if you noticed, because it will give a much nicer look after we put the EVA foam on top. After that, we hit it with an orbital sander to see if there were any high or low spots, and there were quite a few, so I had to go ahead and double coat and in some places triple coat this. I also used West Systems 105, a thicker epoxy that won't run, to really seal in all the edges and some of the deep gouges, because the other stuff kind of thin sets and goes places and it takes forever to cure. At least when this stuff takes forever to cure, it'll stay there. And this same process of recessing these aluminum hatches into a wood deck can be carried on to any other boat besides this one. In recoating all the epoxy, I had to retouch up the edges of the hatches and also touch up the sides of all the wood to make sure it matched the edge of the hatches. So we go ahead and just very tactfully paint it in very carefully, and then we get the sides with a piece of cardboard just kind of overlapping the plastic so you don't paint on the boat, and then it's ready to go. And these are the hatches that have been steadily drying and curing outside for a few days, and now we are ready to lay it. Make sure you have all those hatches perfectly centered, and if you do this right, you can just lay the turf right over the hatches and the wood deck, and it'll just be seamless. And yes, the EVA foam will stick to wood as long as it is resin coated or painted smooth with an oil-based enamel of some sort, although the resin will hold up substantially longer than any sort of paint enamel. We sell pre-routed turf in either the cut groove or the lines, or we sell straight up like non-routed DIY self-routing turf like this. If you're feeling real bold, you could just make your own little custom design. Otherwise, you got to pay somebody like us quite a bit of money to get a scanner to do it all, and then quite a bit more money to have somebody put out that custom scan. But you can essentially do your own custom turf job for about 1/10 of the cost of what it is to get one professionally done. So if you have a steady hand and you're feeling bold, or if you have any sort of woodworking experience with a router, foam is way easier to route than wood, meaning that your bit won't just straight up jar up. Yeah, it's easier to mess up, but I think after trying to route wood, because I routed turf before I routed wood, wood's a lot harder. There are some bits you can get that leave no strings behind, but most of the time you're going to have to do double passes to get most of the strings off, and if you really want a smooth laser edge finish, you can get a soldering iron, a low temperature one, like the temperature needs to be down, and you can just very, very closely but very carefully rim the whole thing and burn off and seal off the rest of those edges, and it looks really clean. You can't even tell. Just a quick reminder that we have the largest, most successful Facebook platform for stuff like this, full of people who have done awesome things and have come to show them off and help others out. If you lined up all your hatches correctly and you just laid this over and only routed the edges of it, it actually looks really clean and everything lines up. It's actually maybe even easier to line up than the line turf where you have to have it completely lined up or it goes off and you can tell forever. But if you've been with this channel for a while, you know we don't stop there. We're gonna make lines everywhere and we're gonna go ahead and push the envelope a little bit. So far when I've done this, I used either stencils or I created stencils and I did it very, very carefully and cautiously. And you know, it has its benefits, but it also has its restrictions and boundaries. So I'd still like to kind of break out of that. You know, for a while, throughout high school and throughout most of my life, I've been able to kind of outdraw and just beat people artistically. And then I was a CO for a specific time in prison, and then I actually got to see what real artwork is. The best artists in the world are rotting in prison. What a waste of talent. We're talking serious talent. I'm about to show you some freehand stuff that we're gonna do with this router, stuff that most people wouldn't even try or dare to. I've been getting a lot of compliments on it, but I will tell you the stuff I saw in prison makes this look like tiddlywinks, like child's play. It also inspired me to do better. It humbled me, made me feel how small I really am. And it also reminded me that before all these machines came along and kind of subjugated everything to be how that was the standard, before machines came around, there was man. There was us, and we did it first, and we did it better. Is this overkill for this boat? Absolutely, but it is a small contribution and dedication in remembrance of all these people who would otherwise smoke everybody else in the industry, but can't because they'll never see the opportunities that I have. The only thing that separates me from a lot of them is luck. The bigger game changer in this was I used a Dremel router this time, which is able to take much smaller bits than anything available to the general public through a standard router like the one I had with DeWalt. You can actually use bits that will get super fine lines and really small right in there. Otherwise, anything you can do with the standard router is kind of fairly basic. We've actually done some pretty profound stuff with the standard router and with small articulations of the Dremel, but never with the plunge router attachment. The plunge router attachment is on Amazon and it's fairly cheap. And you can find Dremel bits pretty much anywhere. Now for the inside of the hatches to kind of give it an extra pop. It'll be a little bit different because most of the time I use a series of hatches that make up the deck and I don't actually put a real deck on like I have. This might actually be the first one ever that I've done this way because I've always tried to follow like true bass boat principles of series of hatches that make up the deck. So we are going to make these work, but then we have a bunch of voided space on top of the deck that is not going to be routed. So we're going to have to figure out something on how to fill all that up. One thing you should always have on your boat, just for the heck of it, is a bump board. I'll never not have one of these on my boat. Whether it's routed in or I have to go and buy one of those little EVA foam super ones you can just stick on the side of your gunnel or right on the deck, just make one. Also got to represent the crew, but of course. And we ghosted the logo images this time. We didn't go all the way down to the black. We just ghosted them into the brown. If you look to the right, you will see that there's just a series of little like wooden 1x2s propping up the edge of the deck right there that we directly screwed right into the plastic right there on that groove where the seats generally lock in. And then we used like some scrap bench seat that I've had in the back of my yard in a scrap pile for like years. Finally get to use them. So we lined that. And then I had an actual perfect piece of scrap aluminum from an older boat, very soft, very whatever. And we're gonna use that for the bottom of the subfloor. Now I'm out of time. I'm a few days behind this project. I'm going out for a trip and I'm supposed to test this thing on one of the lakes in Upper State, Arizona. And so we're just gonna go ahead and just boss this. The subfloor was a big problem. Like the floor actually flexes when you step on it. It's not really meant to be stepped on, you can tell. I was just planning to leave it blank in there and just walk on it, but it was so bad that right at the very end of the project, I chose to make just a really makeshift bootlegged floor because the original floor was so bad. And this just has to last me for however long it lasts. I'll probably have to gut it. It's very poorly done. Didn't even resin coat the studs, but whatever. It needs to be done. We made the side panels and the subfloor out of old bench seats and an old piece of scrap aluminum I had in my back of my yard for years. So it's perfect time to use it because my pile's getting big. We'll be completely honest. I had absolutely no idea what to do with the front end caps. I just know I needed them. A lot of this stuff I just wing it. It's like trial by fire. And this, at the very end, the idea just comes when it comes, and the idea was to use these scrap pieces of aluminum and weld them together. The whole idea was to have these end caps cover that horrible gap that was created by the straight deck, but the sloping, kind of angular, weird design of the hull. We then used some spare door edge guard that I had, along with some gator skins that made the entire thing pop. And then we had these obnoxiously orange, kayak handles. We stuck those on there too. We're going to be using transit mount trolling motors. The front motor the motor head is flipped, so it goes forward, even though it's meant for, a rear transom. We also got an experimental prototype for transit mount trolling motors that mounts a fish finder directly to the motor, like transducer and everything. Perfect minimalist setup. So I can't wait to try it out. Not bad for 5 working days and a $1,000 budget. Only thing left to do now is test it, so let's go. We're up here in northern Arizona in Williams next to the Grand Canyon. I don't know what constitutes a pond between a lake, or how this thing even qualifies as a lake, but it's as small as they come in Arizona, and this is where we're going to do the demo. Also, it will not be easy because we're going to pair it against the original Champ. Here it is. We have both of them on this lake, and we'll give you a side-by-side comparison of how they do against each other. Okay, so not only does this thing float, but it's actually doing exceptionally well. I'm trying everything I can. I'm getting some fish, but somehow Gil and my son are beating me on the other boat. I specifically stuck my son on that boat to try and handicap him, so he would have a harder time staying on that boat and being stable, but that didn't really work. I don't know if
it's on now.
He just had luck, but I started losing, and I don't know what to say about it, but I will say, watching them on the boat, that thing doesn't the draft, look, it just stays there. So now I gotta try this thing out and see for myself what it's about and what it can do. And in the midst, Gil is gonna go ahead and try out the Yak Killer for the first time, and he'll give me his take on what he liked out of both of them and which one he preferred.
Yeah, the spot lock is coming at you. Got one. First fish in the Pond Prowler. According to the transition on this graph, it says that it dives down and there's a bunch of stumps and stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and crank this. So we don't do kayaks, ladies and gentlemen. That's messed up. They all have like way nicer ones that are way more stable, and they shafted over that small one. She's gonna fall off. She's for sure gonna eat it. Get on! You're gonna come in, dude? Are you bigger? Is that why you're taking so long to get in? Hey, Gil, I think this one might actually have some size. Nope, never mind. It just fought like a pig. I think that one's actually a pound. Sweet. Yeah, it's a red box.
This guy?
Yep, that one. I don't need the whole box. I'm just trying to pick out one. Which one do you think?
I don't know.
I have some. Oh, I got a little freaking fish. I mean, not what I was trying to catch. Dude, that's the smallest fish award.
That is. Whatever.
Okay.
I'm getting pretty good at driving out and getting blown back in by the wind.
I locked you. You know, just all you gotta do is shut it off, just touch the pedal. Down the grass line, about 100 feet out. 100, oh, maybe about 200 feet out. Cloudy weather and windy and wind. Trying to move in on these fish. Aside from my trolling motor eating pretty much all my line on my other rod, we're not doing too bad. Speed 1 really trolls this thing very, very well. Like you're gonna have a nice little almost fast troll speed of 1.5 miles an hour, and you just cover a considerable amount of area, like very quickly. And this really is actually maybe a little bit more fun. I mean, we could have added a foot pedal mount. It would have taken up a lot of storage area where we had otherwise really nice storage. You know, we could have done a lot of things. You know, but really we have way more stability on this because we have 2 free feet and we don't have to always worry about it focused. And then really to tap this way or this way with the articulating head pointing right at you. I mean, unless you're like 6'6" or something and you have to reach down, but really it's right at I'm at 6 foot, it's right at my ear. So if you're 6 foot or shorter, it's cake to grab. And the fish finder, that's trolling fine. That's a friggin' awesome product. Very, very nice, simple setup. And the Humminbird Piranha Max it's all right. Pretty good down imaging. Gives the water temp 69 degrees, 10 feet at 69 degrees. The transition is probably 30 feet out, 40 feet out. I do like this boat a lot. I think what have made it better is if I'd had 2 of these. You do kind of need a terminal stow, and this hatch is really good for just accessing this and throwing your anchor, throwing your net. Stinking water shoes. And then here's your dry stow. I put a pedestal mount in here, and I think that was kind of stupid. Or at the very least, it should have been farther back, like to the very, very, very back, if you were going to even need it. It would be right there. But I would have added 2 more. I would have added 2 of those. 2 of those would have been really nice. To like store all the gear and store everything dry, because there's really, truly dry compartment. I have a little 5-gallon tough tote in there. Then I would have ordered 3 patches of turf because 2 wasn't enough. 2 are the reason I had to split. So the split here is ugly and it shrunk, so I had to figure out a reason why it shrunk so bad. So maybe next time we would smush it, anticipating for it to shrink, because it shrank a lot when we cut it. I've never seen it do that before, so news to me. So that's ugly. But it's really ugly is it's right here in the seam, where if I'd got that 3rd roll of turf, then I would have been able to do something like this. And I would have wanted 2 rod locker hatches here. Yeah, I bootlegged the floor. I don't regret it one bit. And it starts cutting into budget. This is supposed to be a budget build, and it absolutely was a budget build. I think we were under $1,000 for everything. It was like $300 for the boat. What? 60 bucks? 65 for the piece of wood. The hatches were donated, but the hatches are a little bit expensive. So really, if we'd have got all the hatches, get closer over to $1,000, or right at $1,000. So right at $1,000 with the hatches. So you could have been right at $1,000 for the whole thing. The turf did push us over like by a few hundred more than the carpet, but the turf is it's so worth it. And probably camo turf. You don't have to do all these fancy intricate designs. This is my thing. But the camo turf probably would have looked really good on this. I almost did it, but then I didn't want to. I wanted to use this stuff. And the camo turf also comes in longer pieces. You don't have these problems. One piece of turf, I think, almost covers this whole thing. whole 8-footer. And it's also much easier to butt up and not have these problems. All bump boards get routed into any boat I do from now on. They're super, super usable. The deck is pretty solid. I'm about 220, between 217 to 220, fluctuating through the day. I don't have no problems with this deck. Definitely those under supports, those inner supports, did help it a lot. Before that, the deck did actually flex, but we put those inner supports right where the old seats went. And definitely a rudder thing of some sort. Do you guys want us to make like a rudder attachment for these boats? Or for really for any boat, because we'll make like a little rudder attachment, or you can just buy a trolling motor for $100 and some odd. So it's whatever you want to do. And even that 30-pound pushes this thing pretty fast. It would have pushed it in the wind, no problem. Would have done okay, no problem. That would have also done really well up here. It just doesn't have an articulating head. This is like a knockoff Hashwing Cayman or Hashwing Osarian. Sorry. Trolling motor. This is like a. This is a knockoff trolling motor, off-brand trolling motor, but it has the articulating head, and I appreciate that. Really, the GOAT trolling motor ever for this would have been the Traxxas. I have a Traxxas, but it's a 70-pound Traxxas. I did not want to stick 2 batteries in here, but looking at how reasonable the boat actually did, and knowing how front-heavy it is when you go past the 50 mark, 2 batteries in the back might not have been a bad idea. It might have balanced out the boat more and would have had more power. It would have had more leverage up front here. So that is something that we can consider in the future. We could have also rigged a power drive. That would have been pretty fun. Rigged a power drive and had spot lock through ProNav, or even through the Stockman Coda app, but you know, if you're gonna go that far, you might as well get the foot pedal. The end caps are really kind of what completed it. If we wouldn't have made those end caps, this would have been pretty terrible, because we'd have had that open gap. We would have had to fill that gap somehow. Whether or not you weld end caps together, or you just make wooden end caps, you're gonna have to make some sort of end caps. You could have made those out of wood all day. You could have made those out of anything all day. You just need end caps for all 4 corners, including those that just ran out of time. I needed to take this thing on lake. It was far enough, so we did it. But definitely some bootleggery down there on the subfloor. Used bench seats, used scrap sheet of aluminum that's been in my yard for 5 years. Finally got to use it. I knew one day I would use it. My wife gets mad at me for hoarding aluminum pieces. Well, here we are. But also had some fails laying out the gator skins, but we can actually fill those pieces in. We're going to correct some of this when we get home, and we're going to fix a few of these things. One thing I will say, maybe a little back deck back there wouldn't have been a bad idea. You really don't need a lot of this area. I thought it would be stupid to put a back deck, but actually being on it probably would have been a little bit more useful. I thought if we would sit on these pontoons and kind of just steer this, you really kind of have to sit right here to be okay with that. But a little back, not very wide, 16 inches, little back sheet over the batteries would have been okay. But you do need a pit. I mean, if you get a big fish, it needs to go in the pit, or it's going to flop. It'll come on, pin on the deck, flop in. You'll lose a lot of fish without a pit, so you need a pit. How does it do against the yak killer? We'll talk about that. Let's try the outboard on the Pond Prowler. We tried on the yak killer. We got almost 7 miles an hour out of that thing. About 6, between 6 and 7, but we have not tried it here. We are going to try it. All right, let's get this going. The terminal tackle stow here is pretty invaluable for stuff like what we just had to do. Away from these rocks. But we have hit at least 3 or 4 times. All right, let's fly. Huh. Yeah, we're going quite a bit faster. We're going just as fast as the yak killer went. Maybe even a little faster, I don't know. I think the top end speed on this thing is like honestly very close to the yak killer. Maybe slightly slower. Like in the wind, you could definitely tell it was pulling kind of. Or in the waves. The waves really kind of hindered the catamaran design. That's any catamaran design. Aside from that, I think it did all right. Like definitely faster. Like twice as fast as what we were getting out of the trolling motor. That's about average. Like on a small outboard like this, gas or electric, I mean, assuming it's the horsepower equivalent, you're seeing anywhere from 30 to 40% on average faster than like the standard trolling motor you have on it, unless you have like a serious beast trolling motor anymore. But this thing, 55 pound, perfect for a watercraft this small. We're getting about 3.5 out of that thing. I think 4 with no wind. I anticipate we're getting 6 and 7 out of the yak killer. I don't have my phone that had the GPS app, mobile app. but I would think that it's very similar to that in terms of what we're getting. This thing is pretty rad, no lie. It's pretty nice.
I'm not just surprised, I am direly shocked that it worked out as well. I mean, from this thing, which is not terribly impressive, this is the stock build, and in watching my son in it, my son was actually terrified. He never wanted to ride it again. He condemned the boat. But after we converted it with just a simple piece of plywood, I mean, there's a 45-pound sheet of plywood. We cut, over a third of it out, like a lot. And I mean, maybe half, including all the hatches. We re-added hatches, but the hatches and the aluminum subfloor and side panels were lighter than the actual parent wood itself. So really, the weight added to it is abysmal, considering. I mean, the boat fishes so much better with a flat deck than it does with those crappy seats that lock into the middle channel that I don't know why they don't just do this from stock. It would be a profoundly better fishing platform. Maybe they'll do it in the future, who knows. How did it do against the Yak Killer? Well, actually, pretty well. In fact, it won in some areas. It won in simplicity and ease of use, which is a little shocking to me considering that I think the Yak Killer is the ultimate portability and ease of use as far as any sort of real bass boat goes. I felt that all major kayak watercraft its size or any sort of deviant of the kayak monsters really suffer. They focus too much on portability and ease of use and not on quality of fishing. Where the Yak Killer, the portability might not be its strongest asset, but it is still an asset. And by that, I mean, it really does just destroy. You can stand up with ease. At one point in time, I just took the butt seat off because it was in the way. When I generally use it on bigger lakes like my own home lake, Lake Havasu, where, it's a seriously big lake. And I take this thing, I've taken all around that lake. And though it doesn't perform as well on that lake as it did on this lake, really, it felt like it was a glass boat on this lake, where I truly just owned and dominated this lake and slayed fish. None of any real size, which, we didn't figure out what might have caught the big fish until the day we were about to leave. By then we were exhausted. We had fished forever boat. Gil and I, we owned this lake on the Pond Prowler and the Yak Killer. We friggin' had it. Everybody else got in, got owned by the wind, and then they just left. You would watch them pour it in and then circle around in the main area and then just leave in 10 minutes. We stayed and killed it. Everybody from shore watched us. But one thing I will say is that once we gave the Pond Prowler a deck and gave it bass boat-like qualities with actual storage that you could just stand on top of, which is what it's all about, that platform, that ease of use to stand on, standing by itself, without worrying about dying, increases your quality of fishing exponentially more than anything. Combined with a simple ease of use of that transom to bow mount trolling motor conversion and that little trolling fish finder, it was so much easier to use, honestly, than the Yak Killer. Considering the Yak Killer had spot lock and electronic steer and, nav lock, I was very surprised. But one thing, it's never going to be able to top this. 14 rods, enough tackle to choke a horse, 2-day boxes, full battery storage, full electronics. If you can't store all your stuff in this boat, then I guess you would need a bigger boat, but this boat, you should never be able to have to sacrifice. This is not a minimalist fishing rig. This is the size of a minimalist fishing rig with the qualities of a bass boat, to be able to have that tackle junkie feel, to be prepared for anything, and still store in your toy hauler. But I will say that 8-foot Pond Prowler gave me a run for its money, and the Yak Killer did win, but it came out limping, and I was very surprised.
Look at this thing, guys. This is 8 feet. This is as big as that Pond Prowler. It is incredibly unstable. You got to be right in the middle of this thing. This thing's pretty rad, though. A little plastic boat.
I need a trailer.
Check out. Dude, Tracker stopped making John boats. Who made these? Good looking boat, despite the clear issues coming out of the container, right?
It's got no holes in it.
Dude, come on. That's awesome. Look at that.
I need to buy this trailer, dude. $78 for the trailer?
That's what I'm gonna do. She's angry.
Dude, I need to take a picture of this, see if they can order me one at the...
You tell me Nick can make this.
Oh, you definitely could. The thing is, you gotta...
Yeah, look at that. It is just angle, and it's bolts. It's not even welded. What?
The issue is...
Look at this!
Getting a DOT certified.
Dude, it's just angles and brackets and U-bolts.
It is welded though.
Where?
Right in the
Oh, it is welded. You're right.
You can
It does have a
You
bead.
can make this on your own and go buy a axle and then register.
Here we check out the Sun Dolphin, which isn't looking too hot out here. Dude, yeah, look at the water. Pull the boat plug, you lazy... Wait,
This thing is warped. The whole thing is warped.
it is warped, but where's the drainage from here back there?
Ask him what the warping price
Dude,
is.
this thing is literally...
No, who screwed the warp? It doesn't even drain. It's got a boat plug in the very back and then nowhere else.
Oh my god, dude, it's warped. Look at the bunk underneath. Has eaten into the.
Oh man, dude, the whole boat is like imploding.
That's really sad.
That's why I don't approve of kayaks.